In this video, I'm going to do an example that uses JavaScript to handle events that happen on a web page. This will cover many of the things that we've already learned, so it's just kind of a combined example. So what I've got are 3 buttons. They don't do anything yet, a text box, an image, and here's all of the HTML for what you see there and the style, and we have no JavaScript yet. So we know we're going to be adding listeners, and we're going to want to add those on load. So we're going to do the window, and we're going to add an event listener to the actual window, right? And that event listener, we want it to execute on the load event. And I'm just going to use an anonymous function here. So a function without a name, I'm just going to build it in right here. Now, in this particular case, I am going to write several different functions, but I'm going to be accessing this text box a lot. And so instead of having to use document.getElementById over and over and over again, I'm going to create a variable that's global. And that way I can use it in any of the functions. I'm going to call it display. And I'm going to set it to equal document.getElementById. And I'm going to use the ID of that text box. And that text box ID is cone. And I'm not going to, no, we can do lots of things with that, right? We can do .value, we can do change style and a variety of things. I'm not going to do anything specific with it. I'm just going to get access directly to that text box. And then whenever I want to use that, I can use display instead of document.getElementById cone, and that will work really well for me. It'll just make things quite a bit easier. Okay, so I want to be able to add events to these buttons so that on click, that what happens is whenever it clicks, I want it to print. When I click on this, I want to print vanilla in there. When I press chocolate, I want to put chocolate in there. When I put strawberry, I want to put strawberry in there. So they're really doing the same thing. They're really just writing a word to the text box. But the words are a little bit different. So one way that I can do that is I can give each of them a value. And then I can use that value. So I can make this one vanilla. I can make this one chocolate. I can make this one strawberry. And so they have their own value. And then I want to be able to connect listeners to them. So I need to be able to access them somehow. Now, instead of using an ID, I want to get all of these buttons at the same time. And I can't use the same ID because those need to be unique, but I can use a class. And classes allow you to have multiple elements with exactly the same class value. So I'm going to put class equals scoop on all of these. And so they will have exactly the same class. I just separate these, they're getting a little bit long. Just move it down to the next line. Oops, I got an extra R in there. Oh, that's right. That was right. Oh, it's right. Okay, so now I've added exactly the same class to all 3 buttons. So now I'm going to add listener to buttons. So I'm going to get more than one, so I'm going to create a variable called buttons, and I'm going to set it equal to document.getElement. Now I'm not going to get it by EID, I'm going to get it by class name, which is another way that you can access elements. But when you do by class name, it's actually elements, so there's an S there. Because it's possible there could be more than one. No guarantee, but it could be. So, but the name of the function is getElements by class name. And now I'm going to put the class name in here, which is scoop. So I want to go get all of those buttons. And then I want to know how many there are. So I'm going to do that with buttons dot length. And then I can use that to loop. So I do var I equals 0, oops, equals 0. Var, as long as var is less than size, var plus plus. No, not var. I, oops, those are all i's. Okay, so I can loop through there, and I can access each individual button one at a time by just using an index with it. So buttons I, now what I want to do with each button is I want to add an event listener. And this one I want to be the event click. And I want to add a function. And again, I'm just going to use an anonymous function. And what do I want this to do? Well, what I want it to do is I want it to change the value in display. So display.value, right? Remember, display is connected to that text box. And I want it to be equal to the value of the button. Well, remember that when an event happens, when it calls this function, inside that function you have access to the element where the event occurred. So in this case, the button. And you access that element with the this object. So I can say this.value. So it will be the value of the button that was clicked, right? And each of those have a value, vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry. So I'm just going to say, put that value in the text box. And there, we're going to do vanilla, it puts vanilla in there. I do chocolate, and when I do strawberry, I do strawberry. Well, what I want to do is let them build their ice cream cone. They can have more than one scoop, and I want them to tell me what flavor they want for each scoop and continue to click them for however many they want. So instead of just replacing it there, I actually want it to add on to the end. So this is a little bit different. So instead of just doing the value, I want it to first go get what's in the display. Okay, so what's in that text box, I want to go get that, and then I want it to add on to the end of it this value. All right, so if I do that, I can refresh, and now I can do vanilla, and then it adds chocolate, then it adds strawberry, then it adds chocolate, then it adds vanilla. Notice we have a couple of problems. We'll solve those in just a minute. Another way that I can do this, notice this is a value equals value plus something. Another way that I can do this exact same thing is use the plus equals operator. And this is an operator that you've likely seen in a previous programming language. And so that will do exactly the same thing. All right, just gets the value that's in the text box and concatenates on the end the next thing. So let's go ahead and fix a couple of things. One, let's go ahead and say, we don't want to just bump those up against each other. We really want to, if they push chocolate and then they push strawberry, we really want a comma in the middle there. So we need to figure out how to add a comma. Now, on the first one, we don't need a comma. This is so it's a special case when it's the first one. So if display.value is equal to the empty space, then I really do just want to put the value in there, right? And so, oops. Somehow I didn't, there. All right, there, whew, got it, all right. Otherwise, if it's not empty, then I want it to, in the text box, I want it to go get that, and then I want it to add a comma, space, and then the value. All right, so let's go see if that works. Oh, nice. All right, now the next problem we have is the width of this text box. So instead of making that text box just really long, let's go ahead and make this change the size of the text box as we need it to be longer. Because we can do that with JavaScript, right? We can make that dynamic, how big that is. So we can adjust the length of that, but we'll need to know how many scoops they have. So here, again, I'm going to use a global variable to keep track of how many scoops there are. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to go ahead and give that an initial value of 0. And right here, we know that this is the first time, so we can say scoops equals 1 in that case. And then down here, we can increase it every time we add a scoop. We can simply increment it. And this will allow us to keep track, so we'll always know how many scoops of ice cream there are. And so now we can add that, we can set the width of that text box. Okay. So up here it's okay, so in here I won't need to change on the first one, but on the next one, display dot, this is the text box, right? But now I want to change the style. And the style property that I want to change is width. And I want it to be equal to something that looks like this. On the first one, I want it to be 767 pixels. On the next one, 134 pixels. And then on more, you know, we just keep getting this bigger and bigger. And so we need some number followed by px. Well, I can compute that number, right? So up here and add how many, and I can compute how many equals the number of scoops times 67 pixels. I've tested this out. I think that will be really close. Then down here, I'm going to use that variable how many and concatenate it with just the px. All right, let's see what happens here. Okay, so we get that. Uh-oh, something broke. Let's go back and see. Our first clue is that we want to inspect and see, yep, so we get a, look at our console on line 19, unexpected identifier. Oh, I see. The pixels don't belong here. That makes it not workable. Let's see if that gets rid of our error. Okay, that should be better. Okay, now let's see how it works. There it's putting our commas. And there it's making the size of our box. Looks like it's just a smidgen long. Let's go ahead and maybe reduce that to 65, maybe. Anyway, we can kind of figure out what works good. Does that look all right? Looks like it's keeping up. Chocolates are long ones, so yeah, we might need to do just one more. Anyway, you can keep working on it and get it just the right size. And don't put any extra characters on the end. All right, so now we've changed the width of it. So now what we want to do is put a message for them about what's going on, right? And be able to print out to them a message about them. Well, we want them to be able to get done and then print out a message. At this point, they can't ever get done. So let's go ahead and add a done button so that they can tell us when they're done and we can print out a message about their ice cream cone. So we put the name of what we want on the button right there. We make sure we put the type equals button. That's so that each browser handles different kinds of buttons differently, so we want to specify which kind we have. We're going to have to access this, so we're going to use ID. This is the only one we want to be with this function. So here we just finished up, okay, we just finished up this function, right? That goes right. That's the listener. Here's this function. That's the one we just finished. Okay. Let's make sure I've got that just right. There's that. It matches up right there. So that's the end of that parenthesis. What's this one? Okay, that's the for loop. So I add those event listeners over and over again. Okay, and now in here, and then this is, in here I want to add listener to done button. And this one I can just simply get document dot get element by ID done. And I want to add an event listener to this one. This is going to, the event this is going to be is click. And I'll write another function. I'm going to put it right in here. And what we want to do here is write a message to where? Let's go see. Looks like we need to, okay, we've got a heading here that we can use, right? We can do this heading to and write a message there. So document dot get element by ID message dot, and now remember we want to change the inner HTML of this to be equal to, and let's see, we want to say your ice cream cone is being, now we're getting long, right? But I'm not going to put a carriage return in this string, or it will produce an error. It will have, after the string I can add, it will have, and I'm going to put the number of scoops, and we have that in the variable scoops, followed by the word scoops, so it will have 6 scoops. The flavors, and we want to tell them what the flavors will be, and we have that in the text box, right? We have a list of the flavors of what each scoop is going to be, so that's in display.value, and then we can just simply put a period to end it, and that can be our message. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, there's our done button. We add 3, we click done. It says your ice cream cone is being built. It will have 3 scoops. The flavors will be chocolate, strawberry, chocolate. Let's go ahead and put that up here so we can play with style just a little bit to move that up. So to do that, to get this to move up, we have to float this paragraph. And it turns out this is our only paragraph. And so we can just float left, oh, that didn't work so well. Let's see what happened. Actually, nothing happened. We just refreshed it, so there's nothing. We have to click done first, so we just have to keep going. Good. Your ice cream cone is being built. It will have 4 scoops. Let's do a couple things. Let's do a margin here. Let's make this so it's not so wide. So here we would need to make a margin right 4 pixels. And then let's go ahead and do that message. Remember, with an ID, you do the pound message, and we'll put a width on it. Keep that intact. Now we can add several of these and click done, and there we can tell them that. Okay, another fun thing we want to do is notice that I've got an image for a different number scoop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to change this image each time as they're adding a scoop. So let's go ahead and do that with JavaScript. Let's look at the HTML of that. So here we have this image that has source equal to that, and we want to be able to change that source each time. So in JavaScript, we're going to do this. Let's look at where we're going to do this. Every time they add a scoop, we want to change the picture, okay? And we want to do it on the first time and every other time, okay? So just every time. So since we want to do it both when this is true and when it's false, we're going to put it outside of the if statement entirely because we want to do it every time. So in this case, we want to get that element. So document.getElement by ID, and the ID on that element is picture. And we want, in this case, we want to change the source attribute. And we want it to be equal to, and watch what's already there. This is what it looks like. So we're looking at something like this, right? But that would be just exactly the same image. But what I did is when I saved these, I made the names be exactly the same. Cone1.jpg, cone2.jpg. The only thing that is changing is that number. And so it's just this number right here. And turns out that that number is exactly the same number as the scoops. So I can change this. I'm going to separate it out from the rest of the string. I like starting with the string that is going to be final, and then I can see what I need to pull out. I don't want to add any spaces because it needs to be exactly like it was. But what I want to change here, instead of a 0, I want it to be that variable scoops. All right, so that's going to change that source attribute. Let's see how this works. There's 1, 2, 3, nice. Notice that these images are a little bit different. Let's go ahead and get them so that they're consistent. And we can do that. We don't need to do that in JavaScript because that is going to be the same for all of them. So we can just simply go into images. And that's the only image, so we don't need to make a special class or ID. And let's just go ahead and make it 160 pixels. Now when we do it, there, they all stay the same. Uh-oh, what happens? Oh, notice when we get too long, we go off the screen and we don't have any more pictures. So it looks like we only go up to 10, and that makes sense. That might even be a little bit too high. So we want to put a limit on here of how many they can have. So back here in our JavaScript, we want to say, yeah, keep doing this as long as scoops is less than 1 or less than 10. But if it gets bigger than that, then we want to stop. So we're going to just say if scoops is less than 10, then do all of these, right? Let me move that down. Yeah, and I'm going to say do all. I'm going to indent this so we can see what's being indented. Okay, if it's less than 10, do that. Else, let's go ahead and do an alert and say, oops. Okay, so you can't have this many, okay? No more scoops. All right, 10 is the most we can get on one cone. Please click done. All right, so we'll let them know that's the most you can do. Oh, and there it comes up, no more scoops, please click done. And there we go. Your ice cream cone is being built. It will have 10 scoops. We can reload and we can do a chocolate, strawberry, vanilla and say done. And sure enough, there it is. Okay, so there we have a web page that does a variety of things, right? It adds listeners to, it adds a listener for the load event when the page loads, and that function adds a listener to a group of buttons. It adds a listener to the done button and adds all the functionality we need to do the page that we want.